Hello, everybody, and welcome to Volsteadland Live. I'm Amy.
And I'm Heather. And if you're here today, that either means you've been fascinated by Prohibition-era true crime, or you stumbled into the CC and said, a gangster party, sure, why not?
Either way, we're really glad you're here. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Volsteadland is our podcast about the seedy, boozy, bullet-riddled underworld of Minneapolis from the 1920s and beyond.
And honestly, the city hasn't changed that much.
No. So back to the beginning of how this started, just a short little intro here. It all started when my husband and I were selling our house in Minneapolis, and our realtor had a paranormal experience involving Kid Cann, Isadore Blumenfeld, and neither of us had heard of him before, but that's just how it started. I got interested in him. I started researching him, and I thought his life was just so interesting that his story had to be told. So today we're diving deep into the life of one man who basically ran this city during Prohibition into the late 20th century, Isadore Kid Cann Blumenfeld.
And Kid Cann was just one of the many nicknames that he had. And the origins are kind of murky, but we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yep. So he was born in Romania around 1900, and he immigrated to Minneapolis with his family. Due to the city's anti-Semitism, his family had to get creative to make a living.
By his teens, Kid Cann had already racked up a resume that included assault, bootlegging, bribery, and extortion.
And during Prohibition, he saw an opportunity: illegal booze, gambling, and prostitution, and he cannonballed into the underworld.
And Minneapolis was ripe for the taking. Crooked cops, politicians for sale. It was a paradise for someone like Blumenfeld.
He bribed officials like it was a subscription service, like monthly payments, like Netflix, only instead of TV shows, you got the privilege of staying alive.
And somehow he always got away with it.
He lived to be 80 years old and spending his later years in Florida, but ultimately passing away quietly in a hospital bed at Mount Sinai in Minneapolis in June of 1981.
He didn't go out mobster style in a blaze of glory, but instead a hospital bed in the city he could never quite leave behind.
So today we're bringing you wild stories, insights, and a few surprises. Welcome to Volsteadland Live.
Lucky for us.
Thank you.
Lucky for us, our first guest knows even more about Kid Cann than we do.
Yes, please welcome John Dillinger, author of Minnesota's Most Notorious Mobster, The Making and Breaking of Kid Cann.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right. So this is your amazing book,
Which I just finished this morning.
Yeah, I've been reading it all week. I'm not quite done yet, but it is very, very good. So what hooked you on learning about Minneapolis's mobster past?
Well, it started out when I was writing my first book, Minneapolis Murder and Mayhem, and I had planned to include a chapter on the Minneapolis mob, and no particular mobster, just the whole mob, the whole network. And then it ended up being very long, too long for a chapter. Then it was going to be a whole section of the book, like several chapters, and then it turned into a book-length manuscript. And as for how I narrowed it down, one of my earliest readers for that book is Jewish, and she was really interested in particular in the Jewish mobsters. And so I focused in on that sort of for her sake. And then that was so much information there that I ended up narrowing it down to like a kingpin. And one I found very interesting because it seemed like the initial information I was reading about him was so contradictory. Like I would read something and get an impression, read something else, and that was like to be the completely opposite of that, contradict that. And then like a third thing that was completely different. And that slipperiness just made it very intriguing.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, we found that too when we were doing our research.
What do you think was one of the most interesting things that you uncovered in your research?
It was probably how deeply people loved him, like, and also the people who loved him would not believe that he did this stuff. Because, like, when I was growing up in Cleveland, people talk a lot more about mobsters, and people who are in organized crime talk about it very openly.
Oh, really?
Like, there was one guy who I went out to dinner with my high school friend's family, and his dad just started talking about his criminal activity in this restaurant. And he did not mind what what waiters are coming and going while he's talking about, like, the heroin deals he's arranged and
Oh my God.
Everything else. The Irish community at that time I hadn't known that much about him until I found out when they were telling me more about Danny Green, was apparently like not doing very well and kind of downtrodden. And he was like sort of their King David. And he was his crimes made him like more interesting, better. It was, he was a part of the reason for their affection for him. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Whereas with Blumenfeld, I felt people were more like, they couldn't accept that he had done those things. And like, I thought that was kind of sad. Like a friend is someone who knows you and still loves you.
Yeah.
And they were had this cognitive dissonance almost.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And that surprised me a lot.
Right. That's cool. Yeah. All right. Do you think Kid Cann, was more lucky or more well-connected?
I think, in my opinion, it's not a whole lot of luck to be in the position that he was in. Like, he should not have had to do those things. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And, in a perfect world, he would, like... I watched this video about the Jewish community in Minneapolis at that time, in North Minneapolis, and I was thinking, like, in some alternate universe, they'd be talking about this, like, salesman. Maybe he would have inherited his father's business, and he would have been at this, like, character. Mm-hmm. Maybe he would because he was always kind to children. Mm-hmm. And I just imagined this different world where he could have been respectable and still made a living and supported his family.
Right.
Although, of course, in a perfect world, they wouldn't have had to leave Romania and come to Minneapolis in the first place.
Sure.
Because anti-Semitism wouldn't have chased them out.
Right.
But for his connections, I believe that I got the impression that he worked hard for the connections. Mm-hmm. Like he was their salesman, mm-hmm. was the way a Hennepin County sheriff described it. And I think he could sort of radiate this warmth mm-hmm. that made people very attached to him. And I noticed that, like, after he went down for his crimes, finally, in 1961, people who had been, like, embroiled with him, like city council members, who you think would be, like, wanting to distance themselves, but no, they were up there saying, like, no, he was a great guy, he was misunderstood. After his death, when it would have been safe for people to distance themselves from him because he couldn't hurt them, we're still going like, no, he was great. He was misunderstood. Mm-hmm. Like, awesome guy. Like, the press just made him look bad. That was not him.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And it seems like he got away with a lot of things that he probably shouldn't have gotten away with. So I'm guessing the being well-connected really helped him in that way.
I would attribute that to the being well-connected.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned that he was kind to children, and we heard from more than one person that he had always given out the best Halloween candy on the street.
Yeah.
That tracks. Yeah.
What is one myth about Kid Cann that you believe is true?
I had to think pretty hard about that. And I honestly can't land on one, only because I, even at this point, can't separate out, like, what was myth from what was completely made up, and can't possibly be true and would be contradicted by something that Paul Maccabee says when I get up here.
Who's right over there?
Yeah. And it's just, I think it was part of the reason that I got interested in the ghost stories after this.
Oh.
My sense of reality became very, very mushy
Yeah.
while I was writing this book. And that was when I think I just can't answer. Like, I could not land on one.
Yeah.
That where I would be like, yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe anything about it.
It's so hard to tell.
When one of your episodes on this show, you guys were saying like, oh, like, what if Harry Bloom wasn't real? Because Isadore and Yiddy, the three brothers, Harry didn't get into legal trouble, but the other two brothers would give his name as an alias.
Yeah,
It's like,
when they
what if
got caught.
What if they made him up? And of course, that's not true, but it just shows how difficult it is to get a grasp on anything objectively correct.
Right, right. And we do have some people in the audience that can maybe clue us in on some of that stuff in a little bit.
Excellent.
You mentioned ghosts. I kind of did the same trajectory. I had this podcast with Heather first. And then when this story of Kid Cann sort of wound up with the way we were telling it, I moved on to another podcast all about ghosts. That's a different story. But you have a new project coming up. Do you want to tell people what that's about? It has to do with ghosts.
It's my immediate book project. The first thing that I have a book deal for, and that's going to come out next, is Haunted Minneapolis, and it's a collection of ghost stories around Minneapolis. Some of them are very silly. My favorite so far is Susie the Monster, who lives at Hale Elementary School.
Where's that?
It's in the Hale neighborhood.
Hale.
Let's see, it's at 13th and what's the cross street?
That's all right. I don't know the area, but just curious.
And
What's her story?
oh, she just exists.
Oh.
She's
That's a good one.
She's in one of the bathrooms, and if you go into the bathroom, close the door, and turn on the light, you'll see Susie.
Oh.
And the kid who told me this was so convinced of the reality of Susie that she said at the next library day she was going to check out a book and learn more about Susie the Monster.
Oh, okay.
Sounds great. When can we expect that to be out?
I think it will probably be October after next,
Okay.
Okay.
but it
So,
might be
year and a half?
It might be sooner, but that's when I expect right now.
Great. Okay. Well, this is great talking to you. Is there anything else that you want to mention, that you want to talk about? Anything you want to bring up about writing this book?
I had to leave a lot on the cutting room floor. And this is because I love my publisher. This is not a criticism of my publisher. There was a word limit.
It would be this thick, right?
And my first draft of this was 30,000 words over the limit.
Oh, my.
So there's a lot of material I had to take out. But that's not like gone to waste, because I will have subsequent book projects after this where I can incorporate that material I left behind. So this book is actually not every single known and expected thing about Kid Cann. This was more an attempt to grapple with the myth and figure out where the man started and the myth left off.
Right.
I hope I'm not making it sound boring. I don't think it's boring.
It's not boring. It's
No,
really
it's not.
good.
It's
It's
good.
very well written.
The Star Tribune said it was gripping.
Yes.
Can I say the question about if I could ask Kid Cann anything?
Oh, sure.
And he had to answer honestly.
Oh, yeah.
And if I could ask him anything, assuming he would answer honestly, I would want to know if he enjoys the attention from these books about him. 'Cause I first thought he wouldn't, because he wasn't interested in writing a memoir. And he said 90% of what was written about me is bullshit.
Right.
But then I also remembered that a friend of his told Maccabee that Fergie was addicted to ink. Fergie was one of his many nicknames.
Yeah.
And he really loved seeing himself in the newspaper. So I wonder if he would like having books and articles written all about him.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And podcasts.
Yes,
And podcasts.
And podcasts.
He might be here with us right now because this whole mixer that I have here recording our sound went kaflooey for a minute. It just shut off for no reason. So if you're here with us,
Was that you,
Welcome.
Isadore? Are you enjoying the attention?
I'm guessing. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, we will.
And you have some books for sale?
Oh, yeah.
I
That's
have
what I
books
meant to
for
say.
sale at the
She's at the
thank you.
table over here. Books for sale. So go on over and say hi and get a book.
All right. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Thank you so much. All right.
Sometimes history isn't just written, it's filmed.
Our next guest brought Kid Cann's world to life on the screen. Please welcome filmmaker Michael Greenberg, creator of the short film The Combination. Hello.
How we doing?
Good. How are you?
Great.
Great. All right.
We were able to go and see your film at the Minneapolis St. Paul Film Festival.
Yes, that
Thank
was
you for coming.
Excellent.
Oh, you're welcome. That was so much fun. That was so cool.
And I just wanted to personally say one of my favorite parts of the film, and this is shared by the fellow filmmakers who were on the Q&A with you afterwards, was the opening credits. And those
Yeah.
were particularly wonderful, so I just wanted to
Thank
mention
you.
that.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of thought went into those.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing. A lot of thought went into the whole thing for a short film, but specifically those, and wanting to do something. Our whole team really wanted to be authentic. You know, with the money we had, we wanted to make something authentic that felt real, that was practical. You know, we used a miniature. We used all the credits on those things were printed and physical and in frame, and you know, minimized CGI because we didn't have the budget for it, and we
Right.
Right.
speaks
Yeah.
there of what we were making. So.
Nice. We will ask you also what inspired you to create a film on Kid Cann.
Yeah, so I grew up here. I grew up in Plymouth. You know, I'm part of the Jewish community here, and it was a story that I had never heard one single thing about. Not a single thing, and that, you know, shocked me a little bit. So I just moved back from LA. I was out there, you know, got my start in the business, and then somebody told me about the story. It was kind of still during the pandemic. It was like 2021, and I'm a big believer in things are meant to be. When I heard that story, and you know, I realized that nobody's told it. You know, the Coen brothers didn't touch it. They did a whole gangster, with not using any of it. And I was like, you know, I feel like it's my duty to tell it. And tell it in the right way. And you know, being a film guy myself, I've never seen. You know, I'm a big fan of gangster pictures of the genre itself, and I've never seen the Jewish community represented in a way that was satisfying to me. We've always been at the expense of the Italian mob or anything. You know, you go watch Casino and it's effing Jew this and effing Jew that, and it's like, why? Like, find somebody else. You know, we're an easy target for laugh. It's like I wanted to create something that was, you know, one, strong Jewish characters on screen, but that dealt with the depth and the harshness of a first generation immigrant from a Jewish lens, you know, and that's what, you know, mob stories are. They are, you know, first generation immigrants trying to make it in America when people don't want you to.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's our turn to have a story of, you know, he's not the best guy. Great. None of those guys are. It's
Yeah.
not, you know, the violence
Right.
isn't something to be proud of, or, you know, that the Jewish community is proud of, but you know, it was a one generational thing that these guys were in a very, very specific situation that they took advantage of, and we know the history of what happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I could go on all day about why I felt the need to put this on screen, and the goal of doing something later in my career where I can get a budget that's much bigger and do it on a much bigger scale of more likely a series with 40 years of history. We have a pilot written right now.
Nice.
And a whole show Bible of our plan for that, but it'd be a big show.
Are you thinking like an HBO, like?
Yeah, you know,
Game of
a
Thrones type of
series.
thing?
It could be, you know, more as a filmmaker. I love features. You know, I'm working on my first feature right now that we're in pre-production on, that we're going to shoot here in October. Totally unrelated. It's a contemporary neo-noir thriller. And so I want to take my time with Kid's story, because it's not just his story. It's not just the Blumenfeld story. It's the history of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and that's not something to be taken lightly.
Right.
You know,
It's a fascinating story,
so
really.
I will absolutely tell this story on a much bigger scale for
Awesome.
when I can, but you know, whether that's in 5 years, 10 years, I don't know. I want to take my time and do it right. And give it the attention and you know, level of detail that it deserves. But I think for the short film, you know, we made it for $7,000. We made it for
Wow.
nothing. $7,000 in 4 days, and just, everybody's heart and soul that was on our cast and crew, and just wanting to get this on screen at least a little bit to start.
Yeah.
And we're extremely proud of everything that we've made. And
Well, you should be. It's awesome, you guys. And it's on YouTube now, right?
Yeah,
you just released it on YouTube.
We just released it last week. We have like over 16,000 views already. It's just, been about 7.
Wow, that's amazing.
We're hoping that people share it and continue to show it. It's easy to find. Just search Kid Cann short film on YouTube and it'll pop up. So
It's called The Combination.
Yeah, The Combination.
Okay.
Now, my favorite question that we have for you is, if money and budget was no issue, who would you choose to play Kid Cann in a feature film?
Well, that's in a feature film. Well,
Or the series.
the series.
Or the series.
The series would be tough because we need to find somebody young enough to age with us.
Oh, right,
Because
right.
part of the story that I love and what we show in the short film so much is the beginning of what looks, of a mob boss's story. And I feel like in film, we don't get it represented enough of like how they got into that place in the first place. Think of The Godfather's like, all right, they're already, Michael does get into that spot a little, but his family's already, they are already his dad is the Don. It's passed down to him. It's like, these were 20-some-year-old kids that fell ass first into being the Dons of Minneapolis. It's like, that's what's really enticing to me and what's fun about it. And obviously that comes across in the film a lot of their kind of naiveness and cockiness, and that, that Yiddish humor and is something that I'd never seen done before in Mob. So that in there. But back to your question, I don't know. Daniel Radcliffe, if we were just like saying in their 30s, like, why not Harry Potter? He's Jewish. That'd be a strange role for him, different than he's taken.
Oh, that would be from Harry Potter to Kid Cann.
I haven't thought about it that much because, but yeah, I think he's the one if we're saying, besides Ryan London Levin, that is Kid Cann in our short film. Besides him, he's my number one. But,
He's very good.
Unfortunately for film, in order to sell a product to a worldwide audience, you gotta have faces that people recognize. But Ryan will hit it big.
Very
he's
good,
awesome.
and he looks exactly how I pictured Kid Cann in my head.
Yeah,
so maybe if you don't do this for another few years, he'll skyrocket to fame in between, and then you can have him.
I hope he's not too old. I mean, we could have a couple actors playing the role if that's not ideal, but we could.
They can do a lot with makeup.
Maybe
now.
Daniel Radcliffe. I don't know.
Okay, good. I like it. All right. How did you choose the film's tone and style?
Yeah. Just looking at references of shows and films that I love, throw a bunch out there. But, Miller's Crossing by the Coens, kind of the look and color of it is so great. Our tone is a little bit less serious. Well, I mean, it's not less serious, but there's a little bit more comedy in there. Peaky Blinders was a big one. Is a show, obviously on Netflix now. That's great in the era. We just watched a bunch of stuff of that era. Boardwalk Empire was another one that does the period very, very well, starring Steve Buscemi on HBO. I kind of took all of those and tried to put my own unique Yiddish spin on it, and really snappy, witty dialogue and fast moving, and for $7,000, it definitely came across on the screen. We punched above our weight, absolutely.
So how do you balance fact and storytelling?
Yeah, I think that's always the tough part of telling a true story is, the real story about Isadore's first murder, or allegedly first murder, obviously not convicted. He was not found guilty of it. It was an accident. It was he and a guy fighting over a girl in a speakeasy or outside of a speakeasy. Probably started inside the speakeasy, but then outside. And then the cab driver stepped in and got in the way of it. And that's a good story in itself. But when you're talking about film, you need confrontation and you need an antagonist. And when we look at the story of Kid's whole trajectory of his career, a lot of the issues that they have are with the press, or with the KKK, or with the literal Nazis in town. And so whether it's a film or a series, that is a giant part of the story of Minneapolis and that they're intertwined with. So I felt like I wanted to interject some of that anti-Semitism and somebody that would have been in the KKK in being kind of the antagonist in this, still over a girl. That's the pinpoint of why he does, this antagonist, what he does is because he's jealous of that the girls went to the back table with them. So, there's some of the real story in there, and the way it happened is an accident. And I think I approached it, and our whole team approached it, as just wanting to be authentic and trying to be authentic. Obviously, nobody was there, just like Marie was talking about, nobody was there. Nobody knows the actual history. They weren't sitting in the room. There's no video or film of these people, with these events. So it's doing our best to tell it in an authentic way, but make it easy and to digest by an audience. So, it's a tough line, and there's never a right answer. I think it's always picking and choosing, and hopefully you make the right choices along the way.
Right.
So,
okay.
yeah.
Which scene was the hardest to film? I know the short film is sort of like one scene, but you had
it's a few.
two because you
It's
had
only a few. Out of the whole thing, we have a oneer in there when we are introduced to the speakeasy that starts with our miniature shot, and it's attached to what we shot in a studio, and it's a whole long oneer of going through
That's
the speakeasy
super
with all these
cool.
different people, and it's all
Yeah.
coordinated of people doing other things outside. We shot that, and that took us half a day coming up with it was written very specifically, but coming up with everything and rehearsing that, and it took us only 13 takes because that's as much time as we had. But that's definitely when you're having that many people needing to hit their marks like that with the camera and everything, which is why they're so much fun. So that, and then the miniature shot took like a half a day. The whole thing of build that, I took like a month of Alex Weston, my art director, who's fantastic, and he was a historian. He doesn't work there anymore, but he was a historian at the Minnesota Historical Society.
Oh. And
we shot the office stuff at the James J. Hill House in St. Paul because he was a manager there. So his knowledge, his access to documents and for art purposes was unbelievable. If you look in the film, if you're looking in Mendau's office there, the newspaper on the desk was from the day that this took place based off history. That his diplomas on the wall were his actual caller's diplomas. The picture in the corner was the guy's actual wife. It's like because he just pulled those from all the records at the historical society.
Oh,
so
cool.
It was, and like in the back windows, he just printed out. Somebody had taken a picture in the 1920s. The building that Mendau's office was in, out towards the Minneapolis cityscape. So if somebody took that picture and we printed it out and put it in the windows behind and then like cut holes in it to get light through to make it feel like it was at night. But you're looking in his office, that's what the Minneapolis city skyline looking out would have been. It's just unbelievable that he found those things and was able to do it.
that type of detail is amazing.
And then the miniature that we built, it was like 132 scale, but that's the actual that was based off the actual building. He found pictures of where their alleged first speakeasy, where this first event took place. That was the actual building. He modeled it after the actual building.
Wow.
So the level of authenticity was fun to do.
That's amazing.
Nerd out on all that.
Oh yeah. Oh no, I love that. That's awesome. All right. Well, your new project. Do you want to tell us anything about what you're working on now?
It's a neo-noir thriller called Come Down. It's contemporary. It's very in the vein of a lot of the work by the Safdie brothers out in New York. So we have a team of all Minnesota filmmakers here, but I've signed on a very experienced producer named AJ Ranello. And we're talking, I can't say names right now, but we're talking with known talent, and we'll have a pretty good budget, and it'll be like the biggest film shot in Minneapolis in about 10 years, and we're hoping to shoot in October here in town.
Awesome.
And
Oh,
employ
wow.
a bunch of Minneapolis and
Are you still looking for extras? Because
we haven't even started that. We actually will be.
We'll be in touch.
So we're planning to shoot that in the fall, and things are going really, really well so far. So
Awesome. I can't
bring
wait.
some more real projects to Minneapolis is kind of the goal of our team, and use the tax credits that literally yesterday the state of Minnesota was potentially putting our tax credits on the chopping blocks because nobody's used it. And so we've been working for almost a year to get this project up and running, and we'd be the first Minnesota team to use our own tax incentives instead of films coming in from LA or Atlanta and using advantage of our crew and tax incentives. We'll be the first ones to be from here using our tax incentives and hopefully kicking it off and showing the state that we need the film industry here. We need the tax credits because we can't make films here without them.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
This film is the combination as well. I want to come back and I want to shoot it here because it's authenticity. But you can't do that on a big budget thing without tax credits. If we don't have tax credits that are the bare minimum, we got to go shoot somewhere else, and that would suck. So
Yeah. I've been hearing a lot about that. People that are like Rob Lowe's game show is shot in Ireland because it's cheaper to send 100 Americans out to Ireland than it is to do it in LA.
yeah, funny enough, the stupid tariffs are reversing that a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, they're saying that it's cheaper to shoot here
Because
and
now
stay
it's
here.
expensive everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah. Interesting. All
yeah.
right. Well, we could probably go on and on about
Yeah, we
that,
could.
but probably not the time and place
we're
for
here,
that.
We're here about Isadore.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And we're really glad that you were able to join us. We wish you the best of luck in all your endeavors. I'm super excited to see the combination be either a series or or
A feature.
feature film.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to happen.
Yeah.
I've been
Everybody
wanting
check
that to
out.
happen.
The combination on YouTube.
On YouTube,
Yeah.
yep. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much.
Michael.
Thank you.
So now, for someone who could probably out-research all of us combined,
Paul Maccabee, author of the crime history book John Dillinger Slept Here. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Kid Cann, wherever you are.
yes. So I'll ask you the same thing we asked everyone else. What hooked you on the gangster past of Minneapolis?
I was in the newsroom of the weekly Twin Cities Reader of dearly departed newspaper history when someone ran into the newsroom, this was 1981, and screamed, "Kid Cann is dead. The Godfather has died." And I thought, what the F? Are you kidding? Minnesota has a Godfather. And I thought, I'm from Boston.
I'm from Boston.
There you go. Good. And I thought that Minnesota history began and ended with Bob Dylan, Prince, and J.J. Hill. And I was so thrilled that we actually had a Godfather in Minneapolis. Initially, I was going to, sorry about this, Ron, I was going to write a book about Kid Cann. And then I discovered, this is a very small Jewish community in the Twin Cities, that I am related through marriage to one of the members of Kid Cann's gang.
Ooh.
And I figured I would be a pariah at family reunions. So, and then suddenly said, well, don't you know, John Dillinger lived in the Twin Cities, Babyface Nelson, Machine Gun Kelly, even Bugsy Siegel visited the Twin Cities. And then that went into the direction of the Public Enemies. But Kid Cann, partially because I'm Jewish, and I always thought naively that mobsters were Italian. Out of Boston, Rhode Island, as the Balestraries and Civellas in Kansas City. So I didn't know about, of course, Bugsy Siegel and many others who were Jewish. And that's a big part, as the short feature, The Combination, shows. That was a big part of Kid Cann's impact on the Twin Cities. It both affected him and he affected how people in the Twin Cities viewed Jews, powerful Jews.
Yeah. Okay. So how did the Twin Cities Jewish community view Kid Cann, and how has his legend fed into Minneapolis's anti-Semitism and all of that?
There's no question that Kid Cann was like Kaiser Soze in The Usual Suspects. You know, parents would go, if you're not good, Kid Cann will get you. The Jewish community was split. There were plenty of people. There's a Yiddish term, a shunda for the goyim, which is to embarrass the Jewish community in front of non-Jews. So there's loads of people who felt that. But then I ran into innumerable people in the Jewish community who had grudging admiration for Kid Cann. The fact that he was, quote, a tough Jew coming from Romania as an immigrant in the wake of the Holocaust later in the 1930s and 1940s, that he was a tough Jew. And he would give enough money to the synagogues in the Twin Cities that he was, Kid Cann, given the honor of coming up to the bima, the altar, what we call an aliyah, and he would be given an honor, and yet he was the godfather of Minneapolis. So the Jewish community was torn.
Yeah, that's kind of what we saw, and that's what Ron was saying too.
So how were the crimes of Kid Cann and David Berman different from those of St. Paul's public enemies, such as Dillinger, Creepy Karpus, and the Barker Boys?
There's no question Dillinger, Barker, Karpus gang, Alvin, Creepy Karpus, Freddie, and Doc Barker had much better public relations.
Okay.
No way.
A better publicist.
Much better publicist. So, you know, I was talking once with Tony Boza, the former police chief of Minneapolis, and he said, the gang in Minneapolis, speaking of the combination, and Davy Berman, the syndicate, the gang wanted to make money. So unlike in other cities where, as Tony Boza, the chief, said, you'd see bodies floating down the Mississippi River, the combination didn't want bodies floating down the Mississippi River. They wanted multiple liquor licenses. They wanted, apparently for $100, Kid Cann could bribe a Minneapolis city council person. So they wanted political power. They wanted economic largesse, but they didn't generally want people to die, which is interesting when you consider Walter Liggett, the journalist,
yes,
for whom so many say Kid Cann was the assassin or the killer. I don't believe he was. I do believe he hired the hitman who killed Walter Liggett. But generally, Kid Cann, even though he was accused of 3 murders, frankly, he wasn't a talented hitman. He wasn't a gunman. The story of Kid Cann's name, his nickname, is whenever there was shooting, he would hide behind the toilet, behind the can. So he didn't have, unlike Jack Apple, who was a syndicate hitman for both the Berman Syndicate and the Blumenfeld combination, Jack Apple was a killer, as was Willie Icepick Alderman. I love their nicknames. Who apparently would clean your ears with an ice pick as a way of killing you. That generally is not how Kid Cann is viewed by the people who knew him.
Yeah. I was going to ask that too. You don't believe that he killed Walter Liggett?
Marta, who has passed, Marta Liggett, his daughter, was a small girl at the time when she witnessed the killing of her dad. How horrible. Marta always believed, as did her mother, that it was Kid Cann. Kid Cann's alibi was that he was in Abe Garfinkel's barbershop. I think that's a kind of a limp alibi. But again, the biggest argument that Kid Cann did not kill scandal sheet journalist Walter Liggett is Kid Cann would have hired somebody to do it. He wouldn't have done it himself.
That's what I thought too. I got the impression in the research that we did that he did not really want to get his hands dirty, that
Correct.
He would hire someone else to. Oh, he may have been in the car.
He may have been in the car. And let's not forget the Connie Alton,
that's
who
an interesting story,
was the bookkeeper who turned state's evidence against Kid Cann's syndicate. And Connie was driven on a one-way ride, much like Miller's Crossing with the Coen brothers, and shot to death. Most likely, Kid Cann was there. Most likely, he did not pull the trigger on his accountant.
Yeah. Okay, so our last question. How did the FBI or the Justice Department finally bring him down?
It's so ironic. Here's a guy, Isadore Blumenfeld, who was accused of 3 murders, involved in the rackets, labor racketeering, and yet what really got him, he served a year in the workhouse for a prohibition offense, but ultimately, as someone has said, he was quite slippery. He was constantly acquitted. When the kidnapping occurred that Machine Gun Kelly was sent to prison for, Kid Cann probably was involved in the ransom. He was the only person in all the defendants to get acquitted. So Kid Cann was able to get out of almost everything that he wanted to. I'm sorry, tell me your question again.
Oh, how did they finally bring him down?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
they finally brought him down. It was a woman. It's always a woman. Of course it is. Marilyn Tollefson, who he transported across state lines, meaning he was dating a woman. Okay. And he brought her across state lines. That was a federal Mann Act offense.
Yep.
But what's interesting is, according to the Immigration and Naturalization Service files and the Justice Department files, J. Edgar Hoover, most likely a closeted gay man, let's get it out there. J. Edgar Hoover decided to investigate Kid Cann's sex life. and there's quite a lot of it. It's my ears burn as I read it. I interviewed one of the people who was at the quote sex orgies that Kid Cann was doing. You know, he was having a good time. He was, you know, if you're a mob boss, why not do it? Right. You know, if you can do it. But apparently, the FBI was so desperate to get him, they eventually were able to get to Marilyn, his girlfriend, most likely a case of prostitution. And then, incredibly, Kid Cann tried to bribe a federal agent while he was being tried for another offense, and they got him for bribery. And then, as you know, Kid Cann, unlike Bugsy Siegel, who was shot to death, unlike so many other gangsters of the period, was seen in Minneapolis checking his stock market prices at his stockbrokers, and died a natural death at Mount Sinai Hospital in Minneapolis. One of the only men of his generation in the mob who died basically in his sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy. All right. Well, is there anything else you want to tell the people? Make sure that they know about either your book or anything that we haven't covered about Kid Cann?
You have been so thorough. I just have to add something, which is somewhat leaning towards St. Paul's experience with the mobsters, and you alluded to what was different about the gangsters, is the people of St. Paul knew that public enemy number one, John Dillinger, was there eating at restaurants, and they didn't turn him in. I am always fascinated how we in Minnesota and in the United States have thought that we could find common ground with gangsters. And that happened in St. Paul big time. It happened to some extent in Minneapolis. Everybody knew what was going on. But it goes to, during World War II, how did we keep the docks safe from Nazi saboteurs during World War II? We work with the mafia. When the CIA wanted to kill Fidel Castro, we talked to Santos Trafficante, the head of the Louisiana mafia. So I think what the lesson to be learned from the Kid Cann combination experience, certainly from the St. Paul experience, is we tend to try to tolerate criminality, and it ends up biting us in the butt historically over the last century.
Sure. All right. Yeah, that's great. That's true. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
We're
guys.
honored
Thank
that you
you.
wanted to come up here and talk to us. And I know I spoke to you while we were doing the podcast, and we had a little Zoom, and we talked about some stuff, and that was really great. But it's nice to finally meet you in real life, in person. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy.
Everybody,
Thank you, Heather.
You to Paul
Thank
Maccabee.
you.
Okay, before we get into audience stuff, I just want to mention real quick. Over in the corner, Greg, raise your hand. That's my husband, Greg, and that's our little table where all our stuff is. And you can get more info on we have T-shirts, these, and yeah, he's holding up the sign. Little QR codes there. And all stuff about our podcast is over there. So you can head over there if you're interested in that.
Stickers.
There's stickers. Like there I have on my water bottle. So that's where you can go for that. Okay, and now we have someone who brings the story full circle, family style.
The grandson of Abe Perkansky, Kid Cann's business partner. Please welcome Mark Perkansky.
Oh, nice.
You can let that play. I love that song.
That song is written by my friend Melissa, by the way.
Oh my God. Well, it's hard following up all this legendary history. Great job, Ron. I want to say your book's for sale back there.
Yep.
If you need one, go on over there and get an autographed copy. Here's your chance.
Pick one up. It's amazing. It's
Great
very
job.
good.
I have actually got one under the side at Barnes & Noble before it was released.
Ooh.
2 copies. And then I read it instantly. And then I'm online and I'm seeing some event at the CC Club. Now, let me just say, first of all, I talk a lot, but then you'll kick me off. It's okay. Anyhow, so I'm researching it, and I believe Amy wanted maybe to come on the show when it first started. I've been a fan of it since 2021, since it started. Kind of watching it. Maybe nobody knows that, but I don't tell everything I watch and do. But so I love the show. Full circle, I see this event sponsored by the CC Club. Let's hear it for them for a great job for hosting. And Randy Siegel over there. Thank you, Randy, for having me in your joint. And so I'm researching it, and I see Collected Sounds. The event is sponsored by Amy Lotsberg. Okay, so let me just say one thing. Holy moly, Amy Lotsberg. Okay? Go back to me. I will tell you my history. I was a childhood magician growing up. Go back to 1979. I'm on the Aquatennial doing magic, panhandling, whatever you call it, bootlegging magic. A guy walks up to me and he says, I want you on my show. I just started out. I was 12 years old. And he says, come on my show. I go on his show. It was a Saturday, I believe, 2 shows. And I think he asked about the flame, and he knew my name, and he put me on his show. I owe this guy tremendously, the legendary Alan Lotsberg, okay, who was a gentleman and a mensch, a mensch. The video is on my YouTube. Just go to Magic Mark Productions YouTube, and you will see it there, me talking to him. I'm nervous as hell. I'm shitting my pants, and Alan's talking to me. And he gave me my start, so thank you. I want to thank that. And so that's it. I'm anything for Amy.
I
so
had no
here
idea.
I am.
I had no idea. That's amazing.
I knew you didn't, but thank you. Nice to meet you both. Let's hear it for Amy and Heather.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
For hosting and letting me on here. And just tell you a little bit of my background. I'm going to bring my family up, too. If they want to come up here and sit, I want to introduce them. I'm Abe's grandson, only living grandson, alive, grew up here, born and raised in St. Louis Park, grew up at the Flame. I'm born in 1966, so first 12 years of my life was there. That's why I'm completely not normal. All this stuff, it's funny because I have props, by the way.
Oh, good. It's like Gallagher.
Like Gallagher. I'm like Gallagher. Is he still around?
I don't believe he is with us any longer.
All right, so I grew up here, and I find it funny some of the names they call gangsters: thug, criminal, mobster, hoodlum, racketeer, crook, robber, brigand, mafioso, hood, tough, desperado, gunman. Here's my favorite one: crony, henchman. With names like these, I don't know how anyone find anything interesting about it. But here we are, discussing this today. So I grew up at the Flame. First 12 years, I have mostly stories about my grandparents, the Perkansky brothers over there. They're standing outside in this photo I got here of the Flame. It was not the Flame yet. It was probably Club Carnival, the Happy Hour, because it started in 1939.
Is it these two?
This is on the far left. We have Harold, youngest to oldest. Monty, Joey, Percy, Abe, and Ray. The two on the far right were the ones who were owners of the Flame Cafe. Kid did have a hand in building the building with them. He was a partner with my grandpa. They grew up together, came from the same background. They were Russian Jews, as Paul knows. Anything I'm saying wrong, Paul, please correct me. Let's hear it for Paul back there. Because I know so they grew up together. One thing they said was they came here, my grandpa came here from Ellis Island. They said, what do you want to do in America? As a little boy. He said, I heard you can make money there. And that's why he got here, and he came here, and he owned several different things. I can take questions about what he owned and what he did. And he became, I don't know where he met Kid. Maybe Paul will know where he actually met Kid Cann. And they were buddies throughout and had a lot of history together. I would hear his name, growing up. And just a hell of an upbringing. And I don't know, a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And Abe and Ray were the two partners of it through the end. And it got closed down in 1978.
Right.
Okay. Go ahead. Anything you want to ask me?
I do have some questions.
Long-winded intro.
No, that's good. So you already touched on this a little bit, but what kind of man was Abe Perkansky?
Okay. As a family man, can I call out my two sisters now just to sit here with me?
Yeah,
in case
sure.
anyone wants to ask them anything?
No
My
problem.
older sister, Lisa Perkansky Goldwater, who's a little bit older than me, who might be able to shed some light on some things I don't know, because she's a little bit older than me and has more history. Next to her is my youngest sister, Romy Perkansky.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
They have a son. I also want to bring up one more guy. I'm not making this shit up, okay? Could I please bring up Abe's great-grandson, Abe Perkansky Siegel? Okay.
I know. Wow.
Yes. Like
Oh,
Amy,
look at the shirt.
like Amy said to me with the last thing that you must
Oh
have
my
stories. He's got the name.
I need a shirt like that. Where can we get those shirts?
We'll trade you for one of the Volstead ones after the show. No, okay. Go ahead, Amy. Yep. So what kind of man?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, thank you. Wonderful grandpa. Really cared deeply about his grandkids like any Jewish grandpa would. I think he actually loved his grandkids more than his own kids. Does that happen a lot out there? Grandparents out there, and they love your grandkids more than... Anyhow, so he was a great grandpa, very down to earth. We grew up, every Sunday we visited him. Always together.
I want to tell you, him and Kid and the whole Yiddy and Harry and all of them, and Augie Ratner and Jack Apple. I heard stories through my whole lifetime from them.
I read Augie's book.
Augie's book. But they started Hennepin Avenue and the nightclub business in this town. And I'll tell you, instead of being called and characterized and hailed as gangsters, they should be heroes, because the Jewish families and the little guy got started through favors that these gentlemen did for them. So it was a lot easier back then than pushing one to collect, to chat one and talk on the phone. You just needed to get to them guys, and they would help you open up a little tailor shop. Even Carl Polad went to my grandfather to start the F&M Bank, and Max Winter. And so I'll tell you about the Flame Cafe, which was Club Carnival, which was built for gangsters, by gangsters, so-called. They had big red booths, something like this fashion, with telephones, and at the booth, and tablecloths and waitresses and the crew that worked there forever. And it was a notorious, iconic landmark for the Midwest. Then people would sit around, and next to them would be like politicians, or Hubert Humphrey I had met as a little girl. And a big nightclub would come in, big acts, and my grandpa would always entertain them and take them on boats. But as he called them, Yiddy and Izzy and all the guys, they were of the same cloth, like my brother said. They started as little kids selling papers. My grandpa, under the merchandise building, which is now the Hennepin Arts Center, was 12, 13 years old selling papers to stay out of the cold, and they kicked him out. They said, "You got to get out of here, kid." And he said, "Oh, screw you, I'm going to someday own the building." And sure enough, he did. Bought and sold. But there's a lot of legend, and it was an iconic landmark that they built, and it was like the Copacabana. I mean, really, glamorous. The guys with the cigar bars was there, and they started the liquor industry.
I'm envisioning that it's kind of like that scene in Goodfellas.
Goodfellas, or
like they're with the
Casablanca.
performers of the Copacabana.
Yes. Right. So it was a lot of history there, but after the Flame closed and the stories changed and the politics changed in town, people from all over would say, "Oh, at the Flame I met my wife," or "I was there for this," and I met, we had Willie Nelson. It became a country club after the early days with the jazz and the glamour of the... My grandpa would go to work in a tuxedo, and it was really an iconic place that lasted, and it was started, and like many of the businesses in this town, by the so-called guys from Romania. Anyways, I'll let my nephew Abe or sister Romy say.
I'll let Abe say something. Another thing, Michael did a wonderful job on that movie. On this. I've watched it several times. You did a great job. And sort of based on that 1924 cab drive murder outside the Flame, outside the... I'm gonna show, yeah. But you did a great job. Wonderful. Keep it up. Keep up the good work.
Excellent job, Michael.
I loved every minute of it. And I slept like a baby after I watched it. Okay, Abe, you want to say anything? Or we're going to take questions out. Let me tell you, I brought more props. Okay. Amy, another question. Go ahead.
Oh, I thought this was your show now. How was Kid Cann talked about in your family? Like, what's the lore you guys got?
Always decent words, and a gentleman and a friend, and someone you could count on. It was many stories always around a dinner table, and up north when they all lived on the north side, you would hear, and he would come over quite a bit, and my grandmother. One time I tell you that my grandfather by somebody was being beaten up, and his brother Ray went to Kid for help to save him and begged on his knees for his life. And then he saved him, however the story goes, but the next day was my father's bar mitzvah, and my grandpa showed up with 2 black eyes, but made it there alive, I guess thanks to, Kid Cann.
Wow.
So, that's my good story.
He probably saved each other's butts a lot through the years, and he did, at the end, he did go to his funeral. He felt very bad. I want to get someone who's got a clip of the news. It was in the rain, about 100 people were there, and he felt really bad. So they were lifelong friends.
Yeah.
As soon as they met, they were connected and together through the years. I remember him telling me about him, and I did meet him once.
You did?
Yeah, in the Flame, and I have his pool cue right here.
What? Oh,
Kid
my
Cann's pool cue.
goodness.
So they owned a lot of billiard clubs in town. They had pool tables there. One of the first jobs I had at the Flame was go empty the pinball machines.
Oh, yeah. There was a whole pinball
There was pinball
scandal.
machines there, and then I loved that they had these pine nuts and club soda or Shirley Temples I would have, growing up. Wasn't there much at night. It got a little wilder as the day went on, of course. But the other pool story I have is my grandpa. This is one of the stories. I'm having my bar mitzvah in '79, and I said, trying to get him to pay for my bar mitzvah. All right, I'll go out. Let's have a game of pool. Win, the winner doesn't lose. Winner doesn't. If I win, I don't pay. And I was a pretty good pool player back then, and we played a game of pool where he was living and whatnot. And he kicked my ass at that game of pool. And then he always said he had no trouble with anybody. People would come in, always picking on me. He was about 5'6". He wasn't afraid of anybody. One time he told me a story. This is kind of a good story I have if I don't get to that. But the guy pulled a gun on him, kicked him in the you-know-what, took the gun, and escorted him out the building.
Oh.
And he had never had trouble with any of that. He was, they hired good help. They hired a lot of convicts because they couldn't get jobs towards in the 70s.
Yeah.
So we were loaded with ex-convicts working there. They hired them. So he shows up. So one time he said never had any trouble with any fights or anything, but 2 women, they were a lesbian couple, beat him up. Hit him with a plywood outside the Flame, and he came to my bar mitzvah with a black eye. Notorious for black eyes and whatnot. So any other questions? You can ask more questions, Amy.
Was he known as Kid Cann in your family, or was he Fergie, or was he Isadore? Izzy?
Yeah, Izzy.
Oh my
we
God.
call him Izzy.
We called him Izzy on our show,
Yeti.
and I was like, every time I said that, I was afraid that he was like rolling in his grave, like, don't fucking call me that.
And he might have said to me,
I remember when he went to Florida and he was extradited or whatever you say to Florida. He wanted my grandfather to come there and start, work at the Fountain Blue.
Yeah.
And those new hotels, the Doral or whatever, they own part of under the Fountain Blue or whatever. But my grandmother, she, had family here and didn't like the humidity. So
Yeah.
that was a big loss.
I feel that.
Yeah, we're very close, almost like brothers, I would say, to that entire family and most of them. Yeah. We counted on each other. My mom loved it, and Bronstein, I know that she has passed, but she was friendly with Maury Bronstein, I guess was Bronstein's son.
I know Sandra Bronstein, who was the Brownie's granddaughter.
And Barney Berman, all of them, my grandfather worked with them and helped them, and my mom was very much in entertaining them. My dad kind of stayed out of it, but they had a big boat on Lake Stillwater, and they would take everybody out, and all the entertainers from the Flame, and steaks and whatever it was.
one Sunday I came up, we woke up in the morning, there was a Hawaiian drag group in our living room who had performed at the Flame at the end. Prince Hanalei, Sherwin might remember that. And there they are. It was my experience for a first drag show, and he had a hand in the gay 90s. One time he had so much property that it was called Perkansky Boulevard, if you research it at the time, with him and his brother Ray. They owned a chestnut tree. They had a little hand in the Ramona Cafe, the Liberty Cafe, I believe. But I want to just say there's 3 books out there as research points. One is Andrea Swenson's Got to Be Something Here. Came out a few years ago. Nice piece on the Flame in there.
Sure.
Talks about that it was one of 2 clubs where they allowed black entertainers. The other one was by the Fauché Tower. And so it was really, that was a place, they weren't afraid of that.
Yeah, good.
Then there's another book. Of course, Ron's new book is great. But at Flame History, there's also a website you can go to called Twin City Music Highlights. that's got the best page on the flame. I've been in touch with the lady who's here tonight, Jeannie Anderson. Let's give her a shout out to Jeannie. And wonderful page on the flame, talks about the whole history. You can go and research that and see that there, all the stuff that went on. And she gets it right from microfilm, and it's all researched. There's still stuff coming out that since Abe passed in 1985, Lisa was at his bedside holding his hand when he passed. He passed away here. And they're still finding out stuff about him, that you just don't tell grandkids.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
That was one thing nobody ever
He never ratted.
because I can tell you they robbed him one night after he closed the flame, and they followed him home. And he was at the time in St. Louis Park, and they came in. My grandmother was sleeping, and at gunpoint, woke her up looking for jewelry. And he said, "Listen, leave my wife alone. I'll take you to the flame. Well, there's nothing here. You're looking for cash or whatever. I'll take you to the flame in the morning. We'll open up right now the vault." And they just ransacked the house, and then I guess the police caught them, and there was a lineup of the guys.
Wow.
So my grandpa looked at him, and of course did not recognize him, but I know there was a lot of broken bones after that.
Wow.
But he didn't want to pull him out of a lineup. So that story
Yeah.
I heard, because I guess it never did pay in those days to be a
squeal?
rat,
Yeah.
squealer.
Yeah, yeah.
Never rat on your friends. So.
Fun stories at the holiday dinner table, For us.
I
And
can't.
my mom's side was a sweet, nice, caring family. So it was a hell of a combination growing up, And
I'm glad you did this, though. It's nice history for Minnesota, and it's just great to preserve, actually, some
Yeah.
of what started this.
It's so fascinating.
Well-
And we learn more every time we talk to somebody. It's amazing.
close 45 years, and they're still talking about it.
Yep.
And what went on? So they keep saying, write a book, and I maybe people doing that in the future. They're
And a movie.
And a movie, got a
TV
movie,
series.
getting a book, and all that. So, but, questions for these guys? Amy or anybody else? Any other?
71.
Want to say something, Romy?
I used to sing for my grandfather all the time, and he loved my singing.
Oh.
He'd say, "Get louder, louder, zoom golly golly, zoom golly golly."
Nursery rhyme.
Yeah, he loved
nice.
the nursery rhymes, and I was a little girl, and we'd come over there. We went horseback riding, and he was the best.
That's why she named
Yeah, and I named my son Abe for him, and
How old were all of you when he passed? Abe?
I was born 71, so 70. He passed in 1985, so I was 14, teenager.
That's quick math, Heather. Good for you.
Yeah.
Can't do that quick math.
We all lived here.
Yep.
Minneapolis, St. Louis Park.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I was born in '08, so
08.
unfortunately, I never met him.
Right.
But in the recent years, I heard more and more stories about him. I knew him as a great man, and I'm honored to get his name. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Good. That's great. Thank you.
Very nice. He's got a lot to live up to. And the connection to Full Circle is his grandpa's running this place, so who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah. That's great.
Perkansky into Siegel, so we'll see
All
what he
right.
wants to do. Questions? Any others?
I don't.
Well, I
let's
want
see.
to bring up a friend of mine.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. Bring it up.
No, well,
We already did that. We already did that.
Go for it.
okay. Thank you, Lisa and Romy.
Thank
Maybe
you,
you could stand.
Perkansky family.
And hold that.
I know
close.
there's
We
some
always-
other people who have raised their hands too, and we will get to guys. Bring up, yeah. You go ahead and bring up.
Okay.
I don't know
so
who you're going to bring up. This is
I'm
a
gonna
surprise
bring
to
up
me.
My surprise.
Is this?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
awesome. Okay, I did talk to this gentleman for a little bit earlier.
So we have somebody here. Let me just say a little quick thing about the flame, and I'll bring him up. Can you hear me okay? The man I'm going to bring up describes the flame like this. He says, the stories about the flame were many and hilarious. The following remarks are from this man from an interview he did in Metro Magazine, right out of Jeannie's book, right out of Jeannie's website, Twin City Music Highlights.
Right.
Webb Pierce, the country guy, drove a Pontiac Bonneville with silver dollars attached to it and parked it on Nicollet Avenue with the top down while he played his shows. People would stop and look at it, but nobody bothered with it. It was a nationally known place. Every week, Billboard and Variety magazines would write about what was happening at the Flame. National talent agents would come in there and national critics as well. Sports personalities and other people would hang out together. They had this $2.50 T-bone steak dinner, which at that time was a very good price.
It's still a very
Most
good
places would charge $5 for a steak like this, he said. It was kind of a place where the middle class and even somewhat redneck, so to speak, could hang out. Professional people and the affluent also went there to let their hair hang down. The other people went there to put on the dog. They all commingled with no problem at all. So I'd like to introduce to you a real country legend who's been around for so many years and the last remaining survivor of Playing at the Flame. He's got some stories for you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sherwin Linton and his lovely wife, Pam. All right, here he is, Sherwin.
Okay, you have to understand that I don't hear well, so it takes me a little time to have
That's okay.
Pam help me.
We'll try and talk real loud.
I don't grasp what you're saying.
Yep, we'll go slow.
So, I heard a little bit about your story about how Kid Cann bought you a drink one time.
Isadore Blumenfeld bought you a drink.
Yes, in fact, we had been back in the 60s and 70s. If you had a band playing regular, you played 6 nights a week in the same place, and probably for months at a time in the same place. So we had been playing at a place, it was called a 3-2 bar.
Oh, sure.
Right down the street from the, on Nicollet Avenue, from the Flame. It was called the Savoy. And I'd played there for 7 months. And the owner, there was twin brothers, Ben and Harold Steinman. And Ben had the Savoy. Harold had a place downtown on 6th Street, a big bar or liquor place. And the one that would come down and pay me every Sunday night when we were done. And so on a Sunday night, he was paying me, and I'd like to, it would be a step up to Variety Bar downtown, a big liquor place. And so I said, can you hire us down there? He says, I don't know if you got enough class to make it in a whiskey joint. You had to know Harold. I thought, if he's got enough class to own one, why, I got enough class to play there. But anyway, I said, well, get into the Flame. Nobody ever went from the Savoy to the Flame. So I said, well, okay. The next day I went over to the Flame, and at Ray and Abe Perkins, I already knew them. I'd been in there, and they took in the office, and I told Ray, I said, I'd like to play here. Now, the Flame had a front bar where they had 2 bands that alternated, half an hour each. And then in the main room, you had to imagine this place. They had a big dining room and then a dance floor in front of the stage, a concert-type stage. And that dance floor, the leader of the band, when they were doing a show, he would push a button and that whole dance floor would raise up to the same level of the rest of the concert stage. They'd move the microphones out there, and they'd bring out Waylon Jennings, Hank Snow, Buck Owens. They had major stars every week, do 3 shows a night. So from the Savoy to the Flame, I said, well, I'm going to see. So I went over there, and I talked to Ray Perkins the next day, and he gave me a contract for 6 weeks to play in the front room, where you would play half an hour, and then the other band would take over, and then the band that was on at the time would go back in the back room and be the opening act for the star of the week. So it was a really quite advantageous place to be if you're into entertainment and country music, because they had all these big stars there. So anyway, then we played we opened at the Flame. I went back, in fact, on that following Sunday night when I was getting paid, I said to Harold, I says, for weeks I will have been playing in the Flame for two. He says, what do you mean? And he had this Uncle Jack says, he means that he is giving you his 2-week notice. So anyway, we played at the Flame, and the opening night, either was the opening night or the second night, in a corner, when you came in the front door, the first table to the left, there was a table in it, and when I took a break, Abe Perkins said, Sherwin, there's a man over here who wants to meet you. He really likes your singing. So he brought me over there and he said, Sherwin, this is Isadore. And so Isadore was from me. But anyway, I met him and he bought me a drink. And I normally have Libras, but I thought maybe I should look a little more uptown or classy. So I ordered a Scotch water.
All right.
And he met me, and then he said, "That's my drink, Scotch and water." So
Oh, okay.
I figured I'd establish a little bit of a common base there with him.
Right.
So anyway, we visited for a little while, and he said, "I'd like to sing that song you did again, North to Alaska." He says, I'm not into this kind of music that much, but that's a good song.
Oh, nice.
So I visited with him a little bit, and he had 3 or 4 people around him. And so that was my meeting with Isadore Blumenfeld.
Nice.
Can you sing us a few lines of the song?
Sing a few lines of.
Can I sing it now?
Just a couple lines.
Way up north, north to Alaska. We're going north, the rush is on. So we played in the Flame that time in the front room for 5 months straight. And then there, Harold Steinman, who had the variety bar downtown, was down there trying to hire me to come downtown. But I stayed in the Flame for 5 months, and then we did go down and played in the variety bar for almost a year.
Wow.
But anyway, during the time we played in the Flame, or actually later on in the 60s, in the mid-60s, I had some hit records. And so we ended up being the featured star in the back room. And one time, in 68, I believe it was, we established receipt records or attendance records in the main dining room because I had a big following here in the Twin Cities. So Abe and Ray brought me in to their office and they said, "You have just had the best week we've ever had here."
Wow.
And with all these Nashville stars and everybody, and you had a bigger week than any of them. He said, "Well, I've got a star ruby here I'd like to give you." It was a big star ruby, bigger than my thumbnail.
Wow.
And he said, "We'll have it set in a ring and give it to you, unless you have something else here that you would rather have." He had a picture, I made a copy of it, that was signed to him by Jim Reeves. This little boy peeing on the desk. and the caption is, "I quit." And it says, "To Abe and Ray, Jim Reeves." I told him I'd like to have that picture there.
Nice.
That you have a Jim Reeves autograph for you. So they signed it to Sherwin Abe Perkins.
Oh, wow.
So-
wow, his actual
was-
autograph. That's
and
amazing.
I was a friend of Mary Reeves, Jim Reeves' widow. And I asked her, I said, did he have these pictures with him that he would give to different people for a joke? She said, I never seen one before.
Wow.
So it's
Okay.
pretty rare. This is my original contract with the Flame
Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow.
from 16th of February 1961 is when it was signed. And then we opened. So that would have been the day that I believe I met Isadore Blumenfeld.
And that was 1960 what? 61. Okay.
This in the somewhere in the mid '60s, we were playing in the front room, and they had the front bar. It was a They had a stage behind it, where these two bands would alternate, and it was a triangular bar, and then there was actually two sections: the front triangle, then behind the stage where we were standing was another bar that kind of was a U shape like this, so the whole thing made like a triangular bar. And one time they decided, Abe and Ray decided that they could save a bartender by connecting those two bars together. So they cut out a big section of it, and I asked them, what are you going to do with that? They says, you can have it if you want to.
Oh wow.
I have it in my family room.
Oh, wow.
Goodness.
You don't have Dolly Parton in your family room, though, right? That's a cutout.
Stand up.
Okay.
The original bar from the Flame.
Wow.
I have a bar in my basement at my house, but it's not that cool at all.
Somebody asked me one time, how was the Flame? How was that laid out? I even drew them up.
Oh wow. I've got a whole diagram of where
triangular
the
bar in the front, and then the concert room in the back with a concert stage and
Oh
tables.
wow.
So that was there's no place you couldn't imagine a place like the Flame. Mm-hmm. Two bands alternating in the front room. One goes back and opens for the Star. In the back room, they have a big concert stage, and then with a 6 or 7 piece band, and then a whole week doing 3 shows. And stars. They had Buck Owens, Waylon Jennings, Hank Snow, Kitty Wells, all of them.
I wish there was something like that still happens.
No, we need one of those. We need we need a Flame now.
Oh, wow.
It shows all the stars they had there. George Jones, everybody, anybody that was a country music star played there, except for Johnny Cash.
Oh.
They couldn't afford him.
Well,
And then
he was kind of a
One
big
time,
little big deal.
probably some of you maybe be familiar with Texas Bill String. He was a local star, but he was originally from Texas, and he was quite a character and told quite a few raunchy jokes and stuff like that, but he was a very good entertainer, and people loved him. And this is a picture of me and George Jones in the back room.
Oh, look at
watching
you. All
Texas
right.
Bill String.
Wow. That's great. I'll have to get copies of these so I can put them on the website and stuff. Yeah.
On the marquee in front, there's a copy of the marquee
Oh, yep.
picture.
I've seen that picture
Tex-
before.
Tex Ritter.
Yeah. Tex Ritter.
Tex Ritter was a movie star that had
Yeah.
starred in 80 movies, and he was a big star at the Flame there.
Yeah.
Another one was Carl Perkins,
Oh, sure.
Yep.
Blue Suede Shoes.
I don't know anything about country music, but I know those names.
And then one of the popular bands up front was Artis Wells. Yeah. And that's her band.
Artis Wells. Okay.
Way ahead of the time. So that can...
Yep.
Great.
I remember one time Dick Van Hale, who was the band leader in the back, was introducing Johnny Bond, who he was a country star and in movies and stuff. And anyway, but he was very lively. And so Dick Van Hale introduced Johnny Bond, but he introduced him as Johnny Horton. Made a mistake. And the crowd was laughing, and Abe was standing beside me in the back of the back room. And he said, "What are they laughing about?" I said, "Well, he introduced Johnny Bond as Johnny Horton. And Johnny Horton is dead." Abe says, "So is this guy." There was a hand tool leather man, Cliff Larson, that sat right in I was sitting in the booth right around the side door at the Flame. He would sit at the back of the back room and sit there, and he did hand tool leather work beautifully for every star that came there. He'd make them briefcases, billfolds, belts, guitar straps, everything. Anyway, he was sitting there, and Abe was standing not too far from the booth where we were, and Cliff was telling some Polak jokes.
Oh, no.
Polish jokes. And,
As one does.
Finally, Abe said, "Do you realize my name is Perkansky?" One night, we had finished part of the opening show in the dining room, and Dick Van Hale, introduced the stars of the week, the Louvin brothers, who were very popular country and bluegrass. How many people heard of the Louvin brothers? Have you? Yeah, they had a lot of hits. Anyway, when we would do the opening act in the back room, and then come off stage right, and when we opened the door, there was Ira Lewin's mandolin all smashed up. He had a terrible temper. So then we had to go back up to the front room. While we were walking up there, Ira and Charlie Leuven came out from the stage. They had went back behind the stage and borrowed a Martin guitar from Dick Van Hale, and they came out with that I set a mandolin and a guitar. I did some shows with Charlie years later at festivals, and I said, "Do you remember that when he smashed up his mandolin? He had a terrible temper." "Oh, yes. He picked up every piece of it and put it in a grocery bag, took it home, put it all together, and you couldn't tell."
Oh, my goodness.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. One time, Red Foley, who was a country gospel singer, was singing, and Texas Bill had taken him out in the afternoon and got him to drink quite a bit. Of course, he was a gospel singer and respected as probably almost a teetotaler, but he wasn't that day. He had a hit version of Peace in the Valley, which later Elvis did too. But anyway, he was standing out there on stage. "Well, I'm tired and I'm weary and I must go away." He fell right off the edge of the stage onto a table. And anyway, that was
Got to have 2 drinks during
his
the show.
reputation. Gospel singing too good for him. Well, Texas Bill had gotten him out in the afternoon, and Texas Bill was known to drink it himself. So, well, anyway, that's a few of my stories.
That's amazing.
Thank you for sharing.
So much.
Still playing around.
Oh, you're still.
Tell them where they can find you.
Where are we playing? Are you still touring? Are you still playing?
Oh, yes, yeah, we're still touring. We still do about 150 shows a year.
Wow.
Sam and I, with our band, we call our band the Cotton Kings. I had a hit record called Cotton King in 1967. So we named the band, before that it was the Fender Benders.
Okay.
And then I changed it to the Cotton Kings to go along with my hit record.
Okay.
So we still do about 150 shows a year, a lot of fairs and festivals at the South Dakota State Fair every year since 1973, for the whole length of the fair. Do 3 shows a day. South Dakota's my home state.
Oh, wow.
So we play there, and we play a lot of other fairs and festivals all around Minnesota and the Midwest.
All right.
And also, we will be at Crooners up in Fridley. That's a big place up there.
Yeah,
we love Crooners.
We'll be there for my birthday.
When's that?
My birthday's the 28th of July. We'll be on a Sunday, the 27th of July.
Okay. All right.
Awesome.
I'll put all of that stuff in the show notes.
Pam
for
just
anybody.
released a new album too.
Oh.
Yeah,
Carter Family. Pam, want to say?
Pam has a new album, which is a tribute to the Carter family.
Okay.
I have a New Folk Records recording deal, and we released Songs of the Carter Family on January 17th of this year. We're getting national airplay, and there's a concert show that goes along with it. Pam Linton and Sherwin has allowed me to retain the use of the band name The Cotton Kings, and so that name will live on. So it's Pam Linton and the Cotton Kings, the Songs of the Carter Family, and you'll hear more about that. You can visit pamlinton.com. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram. You can also find sherwinlinton.com with our tour schedule there, and also find Sherwin Linton on Facebook, Sherwin Linton and Sherwin Linton Music.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
I also have to tell you, Abe and Ray Perkins, of course, were associated with Isadore, Blumenfeld, and all of that element. But to me, they were both just wonderful people.
Tell them the story about when you got divorced.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a divorce story coming up.
I had a lady in my band that joined our band, Cleo B. And my wife said, you should have a girl singer. You should hire that Cleo B. She sings with you once in a while. Cleo B was extremely well endowed. When we were on the road, we traveled in my Cadillac, and the band traveled in another vehicle and did our shows that way. And eventually, traveling together with Cleo, we ended up having an affair. And eventually that led to, looked like I was going to be divorced, and which I eventually was. But Ray Perkins called me in his office. He said, I know you have this girl that you're in your band, and you're wanting to get divorced and then be together with her. I'm going to tell you something. Your father is deceased, and I know that. I have to speak in behalf of your father. Believe me, Sherwin, this lady that you're married to, Mary Ann, she is a big support to you and loves you a lot. You don't get divorced from your wife. He said, I have been in this business for a long time, have a lot of opportunities, but you don't get divorced from your wife. And he preached to me. So he was one of concern and believed in moral values in that regard anyway.
All right.
Yeah. Ray and Abe Perkins were wonderful people to me, and just can't say enough good things about them, no matter what their other life was.
Sure. I mean, and that seems to be the case for a lot of the people we've been talking about today. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sherwin.
Pam,
Sherwin and Pam.
Mark, thank you. I know we have some other people that have been like, we have stories, so I want to see if there's anybody else that's still here that would like to come up and tell a story, or anybody. No, we're all silent now. Nobody's raising their hand. No? Okay.
I could tell a story about my dad.
Okay.
Sure, come on up. Get by a mic.
Right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, this one here.
Introduce yourself. Tell us what you got.
Yeah.
I'm David Laban.
Here, yeah, closer.
I don't know if we're still on the subject, but the crown jewel of the.
Closer. Closer.
Okay, is it good now?
I think so. No.
The crown jewel of the syndicate was Lake Street Liquor. I don't know, you guys probably know that. And
Lake Street Liquor. Okay.
my father managed it from the 40s to when I think it closed in the 60s. All that time, and its claim to fame is it was the highest sales volume liquor store in the United States.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't that my dad was such a great manager. He was a good manager, but and the syndicate trusted him, to manage that crown jewel. But technically, everything south of Franklin was dry, 3-2 beer, no liquor licenses, and so they had a gold mine with. They had long tables with all kinds of operators taking orders, and a big delivery staff delivering all over South Minneapolis, Southwest area, Southwest High School. They just had a giant area with no competition, and so that's how it held that high volume sales thing.
Okay.
It was, and it was kind of important that the customer, some people would order a bottle of whiskey every morning. Boom. Many people, and they wanted their customers to have the phone number without looking it up, right? They're drinking in public. And they advertised so much on the radio that I still remember the phone number, Colfax 2122.
Oh, all right. I don't know how you call that nowadays, but
Colfax 2122, and they advertised that heavily. Mm-hmm. But that's my story.
How did you find out about us here today?
Pardon?
How did you know to come here today?
Well, my daughter Allison, Carrie. Who's Carrie?
Carrie is the lovely lady who put this all together for us. She's here somewhere. I don't see her right there. Oh, there she is. She's over there in the corner. Okay. She works with the CC Club.
We were supposed to say hello to Carrie. Yeah, and that's how we found out Allison, my daughter Allison Laban.
Thank you.
Okay. Told us about this, and so
great.
I thought maybe if you guys didn't know the Lake Street Liquor story.
No, we hadn't heard
that story. We do have a couple other.
That was their, like I say, it was their crown jewel. They had 8 liquor stores or something like that. But that one was
the big one.
The best.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. We want to mention. We want to give a huge thanks to the CC Club for having us here. And when we arrived today, let's do a CC Club, whoop whoop, and Carrie for setting this all up. When we arrived today, Heather and I got here early, and Randy, one of the owners, took us downstairs into the basement where they have what is
now covered up.
Yeah, covered up.
Tunnels.
I couldn't come up with the words. Like stoned in, bricked in gateway to where the booze
across
used to
the
come
street
in.
was made, and
Yep. The booze was made across the street and was brought in the tunnels.
Underground tunnels.
Yeah. So we got to go down and see that. I did take a video. I'll put that on our Patreon page, which you can sign up for over at our table over there in the corner. Okay. Is there any? But and Randy's father. Randy, are you around? Where's Randy? Nowhere. I think it's his father, who is Rabbi Max Shapiro, who actually spoke at Kid Cann's
funeral.
Yes. Okay. Do we have anybody? I see my friend Rita. You want to come up and tell a story, my darling? This is Rita. she was very, very helpful to us when we were putting this show together. Here, you're a little shorter like me, so we'll dip it down for you. Whoa.
I'm gonna say something. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Rita has a bunch of stories. And she was very helpful to me when we were putting this together. Her family, her parents were friends with Isadore and Lily. She knew him as Fergie. This was in his Fergie days. So this would have been in the 60s, right? Okay. I'm going to... Do you want to just hold it? I want to make sure we can hear
Me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Star.
You're a star.
Yes, you are.
Tell us whatever story you're happy to tell us, whatever you're willing to tell us. She's a little tight-lipped in some ways, but we're going to try and... Oh, here. See, she's a little nervous about telling these stories because she hasn't told them before in public. So
Okay, what
I'm going to turn you...
story would you like me to
Tell the story about how your father had an idea for how to smuggle the liquor.
With Kid Cann.
With Kid Cann, involving Kid Cann, yes.
My dad was a bootlegger back in the 30s. He was approached, I don't know by who, but he was approached he had an idea about how to bootleg the liquor. So they asked him, he was approached by someone, asked him if they wanted him to go to Chicago and meet Al Capone with his idea. And my dad did, and Al Capone and he are blood brothers, I guess that's what you would call it, that they combine their wrists and blood.
Wrists?
I don't know.
They did a blood oath, basically, in this bar in Chicago.
The thumb?
The thumb, maybe?
I don't know. My dad didn't say.
He was not very, he didn't tell you the whole story right away, right?
Yeah. And so...
What was his idea?
Oh, I can tell you, yeah. For his idea, they gave him a big Cadillac or some big roadster, and it had a big tire on the side, and it was beautiful, convertible, white.
But what was the idea? How do we...
Oh, yeah, that's what he got for telling his story of, not a story, his idea. And his idea, my dad was a milkman, and his idea was to, Kid Cann, to put the milk, the liquor in the milk bottle, and he would, in his little cart or hand thing that rattled all the time, and he would deliver to not liquor stores, but what were they? No,
Probably
he'd deliver
people's doorsteps, right?
Yes, supposedly it was milk, and it was milk and cream and other
and a little
things.
booze.
A little booze.
A little.
Hey,
yeah.
I might make one of those up for myself when I get home tonight.
So that's how the liquor got in there, and I guess they were successful.
And that's
A very fancy car.
Fancy car.
My mother, I said, they were married 65 years, and I said, why do you stay married if you're mad at Dad?
So your mom didn't approve of the bootlegging?
It was before they were married.
Oh, okay.
So she said to my dad, she said to me, I fell in love with his car. So, anyway.
Oh, boy.
Inside joke.
All right. Do you have any other stories about Fergie you'd like to tell? You told me one once about how when you went to dinner with him.
Oh, yeah.
That he
My
would-
mom and dad would go to dinner with Fergie and Blanche and Maury. And they invited me to come, and I had my 2 kids. I can't remember the name. It was like a cafeteria in Midway, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Anyway, I came and my son was sitting there and he said, I like you, and he gave him $1, picked up his wallet, and out it came. I can't remember what. Oh, I should tell you, my dad was foreman of the jury.
Oh, yes.
Or this was the streetcar
Twin
trial.
City Rapid Transit.
Yeah, the rapid transit trial. Her father was on the jury.
Foreman of the jury.
Yep.
And it's your understanding that your father and Fergie were not friends prior to that?
No, I didn't know.
Okay.
No, they weren't. Not according to my mom.
If you look at the timeline, if he
Right.
got that car and was doing bootlegging back then,
yeah,
before
I
your
think
parents
so.
even met, it's a good chance that they knew each other
Acquaintances at
when
least.
the trial came up, right?
So anyway, what happened, I worked at City Hall for the assessor, and I would meet them for lunch when the jury took a break. And we met at Sheik's. And so I would go whenever they were taking a break for lunch. Everybody was there. My mom said, there's the attorneys, there's, the jury, everybody was together.
Which I don't think you'd see very much now.
No.
No, that would never, and that was at Cheeks.
Yeah.
And I loved it, naturally.
I went there a lot in the 80s in college when it was called Graffitis. It was a nightclub. Same building.
Where Cheeks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a cool place.
So, oh boy.
Got any more?
That I was kind of watched in the 60s. I would go out on dates and I'd be either followed or they'd stop in front of my house.
Yeah, there was somebody watching you when you went on dates to see if, like, why do you think you were being watched? Just to see who you were hanging out with? This was during the trial, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was somebody you think was watching to see who you might have been
Probably.
talking to?
I don't know. I didn't think a thing of it. I had my eyes on just one thing at that.
Yeah, the guy in the car that was picking you up.
Guy in the car.
Of course. Why not? All right.
Whoever he was.
Whoever it was, he remains nameless.
So I think that's about all I got.
Okay, that's great.
Well, thank
My
you so much,
folks
Rita.
Never
Thank you,
talked
Rita.
about it.
Thank you for joining us. I'll chat with you later in a little bit.
Thank you for coming.
Is there anybody else who has a story they'd like to tell?
Yeah. Oh, okay. How you doing? Hey, good. How are you? Come on up. Hi, Michael. Nice to meet you. I'm Amy. This is Heather.
I'm cousins with Mark Verkansky over there.
Okay, cousin of
cousins.
Mark Pacansky is right there.
And my cousins Lisa and Abe and
Yep.
Romeo.
Okay.
They're over there.
Great.
Hope everyone's doing well. I'm just here to tell a quick story.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Let's do
Share
it.
some, so about Abe. So as a kid, when I was growing up, we'd go over have spaghetti dinners, every Friday night and he's just talking, real kind of laid back, real smooth kind of guy. And he goes, "Hey, Mike," and he'd pull out this little wad and it always have like this rubber band around it, right?
Oh.
And he'd just lick his finger. Like this, boom, 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 boom. There'd be like 6 $2 bills. He would just give me like $2 bills and just hand them over like they were candy. It was pretty cool. I was like, "Ooh, what is this?" I didn't know what a $2 bill. I was 4 years old, 5 years old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I just think that it was funny how he did it, the exchange and everything.
Yeah.
The way he moved and his mannerisms and everything. A real smart, kind of smooth guy.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So another story is, when the kids would go play, as all the adults would be talking and such, we'd go in the other room, we'd play with, little kids would play little guns or whatever, toy things back in the day, your wooden toys or your hungry hippos and such. But this was all in the toy bag, go in the toy bag, and all of a sudden you look in and there's all these like guns, right? And they're real.
In the toy bag?
In the toy bag, and they're real guns. And I'm like, but they're not loaded, not everything's unclipped.
Okay.
There's nothing. But I'm like, man, why is this so heavy? Like plastic, type thing. So he had a lot of different intricate ways, and this project seems very interesting. When I heard about it from my cousin, I was like, this is something that they need to bring back because it's, it was then, but you know what? A lot of people don't realize that there is things still going on.
Yeah.
Not like the way it was back
Right.
then, but
Yeah, we know that it's still, there's still some stuff going on, for sure. For sure.
absolutely.
Yeah. It's so fascinating. We love it.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a great story. I wish
It is.
the producer and everyone involved in the project the best of luck.
Yeah, for sure.
Wherever you're trying
Michael, let's do
trying
it.
to go, let's tell this story.
Let us know what we can
Tell
do
the
to
story.
help.
That's all I got to say.
All
Have
right.
a good
All
afternoon,
right.
everyone.
Thank
you,
you.
Michael.
Take it easy.
All right. Anybody else have any? Oh, Sherwin has something else. Sherwin's coming back. Round 2 for sure. Sherwin.
Oh, yes.
1936
Oh,
Star Tribune.
okay. I have my hands on a February 4th, 1936 Minneapolis Journal. Olson denies Mrs. Liggett charge. State rests case in Kid Cann trial. Newspaper. Check that out. I can't believe it's not disintegrating in my hands. I should have gloves on or something. $10,000 police offer to fix Cann case reported. Inquiry started.
What's the date on that, Amy?
This one is the date, February 11th, 1936. I'm such a nerd. I want to read all of the other stories that are on here. When we were doing this and I would find researching and I would find stories, I'm cutting out the ads. Oh my goodness. Okay. This headline is February 5, 1936. The headline is Seek Source of Cann's Police Data. That's amazing. I can't believe you have those and they're still not falling apart.
And I remember Flame, he had quite a strong accent,
Okay.
as I recall anyway. I said, when I visited with him at the Flame, which during 2 intermissions, he had a at least to me a strong accent, speech accent.
I would assume he would. I never even thought about that. Like when I read things that like quotes we see about him, I don't automatically hear them in a Romanian accent, but of course he would have that. Thank you for coming back up with those. All right.
Anybody else?
More stories? Anybody else want to tell a story? Are you good? All right. CC Club owners, do either of you have a story you would like to tell? Steve, right? Steve, I met you before last time I did a show here. Okay, this is Steve, owner. Oh.
I don't have a personal story, and it's just kind of an interesting twist.
Okay.
You're talking about Kid Cann. My dad was Rabbi Shapiro.
Your dad was Rabbi Shapiro.
Kid Cann's funeral.
I got that goofed up when I said it before. It was your dad that was Rabbi Shapiro.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, so I wasn't there, so I can't tell you much.
Right.
The only thing I recall when he came back from the funeral was he had two recollections. One, he was surprised by all the national publicity.
Yeah.
He didn't read, I believe Time magazine, when they did their article, referred to Kid Cann as the last mobster. That he was the last living member of the Al Capone untouchable era.
Right.
The other thing was kind of funny because the reporters were coming up to him. He said a group of guys came up and said, "Rabbi, you want us to keep him away from you?" we were assuming that's the new generation of mobsters coming to pay their respects at the funeral.
Nice. Yeah.
Not much of a story, but
no,
that's
it's great.
recollection.
It's great. I love all the connections. This is amazing. Thank you so much, owner of the CC Club. All right. I think we're wrapping up, but I want to
talk about.
Yeah, we want to talk about the guy that wrote our theme song, which you would have heard in the very beginning, a little snippet of it. But I want to thank some people first. I want to thank Mark Christman, our photographer today. I don't know where he is. He might have scooted. And Michael Johnson, who is recording all the video for us. And my husband Greg over there, who's our roadie today. And thanks to Carrie and the CC Club inviting us here for this amazing, fun gangster party. And thank all of you for showing up. And if you enjoyed it, you can check out our table over there with all our stuff. You can find our podcast on any podcast app. We will have this show edited and out for everyone's listening and viewing pleasure.
If you had a great time today, tell a friend, and if you didn't, zip it.
We want to thank the people who helped us get this podcast off the ground. We've leaned on our family and friends and people that we've run into. Some of them are here. But I want to make sure that we give a big shout out to a musician named Paolo Forlì, who wrote our incredible theme song. And this, I came across this when I was doing some research early on, pre-research, I guess, for the podcast on YouTube, and this song popped up. And I heard the first few beats of the guitar strums, and I got immediate chills, and I was like, this has to be our theme song. It feels like it just kind of put everything
what's the title
together.
of it?
It's called The Last Prayer for Isadore Blumenfeld. So I reached out to the artist, and I found out he's Italian, and not like American Italian. He's Italian. He lives in Italy, and he's writing this song about Kid Cann, and I'm thinking, I didn't even know about him until like a week before. How did you know about him? So I reached out to him. He told me the whole story. It turns out he has a whole album about Minneapolis. I reached out to him and I asked him to tell me why he had done this. And fast forward to about last week when I'm putting the whole show together, and I realized that I had forgotten most of the details. So I reached out to him again, and I said, would you retell me why you chose Minneapolis, why you chose to talk about Isadore Blumenfeld? And he sent me a voice note, which I'm going to play for you now. And then after that, I will play the full song, and that'll play us out, and we will be done.
Awesome.
Okay. So this is his response to my asking him to retell me the story.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for writing me. In these days, it's just 10 years ago, because it was April 2015. So 10 years ago was the album Minneapolis. The reasons were I thought a lot about this because I wanted to tell about the town in the world where I'd never been before. So I could not be involved in my opinion in being in this place before, but just studying the history, its history and the facts that happened there. So I began to study many papers, many documents about Minneapolis. And so I saw all the history about these songs, or the people, the thieves, the mafia, all the stuff around it. So it's a very simple story because I wanted to describe something very important in the world, a town that could contain so many influences, many things, as for that kind of life of robbers and mafia people. So I'm very honored to be in your transmission again, and was a black and white world. So let me know so I can hear you again. Hugs, big hugs.